Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So Joe Biden and the Democrats are just digging themselves into a deeper and deeper hole. Biden is delusional. He can't see why people don't like him. He thinks that the polls are all fake and that he's up by who knows what amount, and he thinks that he's going to go out there and beat Donald Trump. And honestly, I say let them have this opinion, please. I hope he doesn't change anything that he's doing. I hope he never attempts to really correct course here. It would definitely be something that would totally own us because he's totally right? Of course not. Take the sarcasm aside. He's in a lot of trouble. And you look at his approval rating, it's 39.5%. Polls can be wrong, but they're not wrong by 18. Because Biden, when he first had his election in 2020, his favorables were actually relatively high. And now his favorables are as low as his approval rating, which is below 40%, and we're less than 6 months away from the election. It's getting bad. It's going to take something massive for him to eke out a victory. And Donald Trump's numbers are pretty decent. His favorable rating is 44? I mean, that's better than it usually has been. That's personal favorability. I mean, if you do the callback job approval, well, Donald Trump is in the positives. He was never really in the positives during his presidency in terms of job approval, so it kind of shows how the tides are turning. People have buyer's remorse. They didn't know what they had with Donald Trump, and they see what they have with Biden, and they want something different. And Biden and his team, they don't believe he's behind. It's true. They have money. They have a lot of things going, you could say, for them, but it's not really working out so far. It's not like he hasn't been spending on ads. It's not like he hasn't been, having this ground game. It hasn't really done him a lot of favors in terms of getting ridiculously high primary turnout or anything like that. So we have yet to really see the evidence that he has any strengths at this point, but still, we can go through this article. Axios is reporting this, of all people. Axios. They say Biden doesn't believe his bad poll numbers, and neither do many of his closest advisors. So you could see the writing on the wall and say, okay, we need to correct course, or you could just brush them off and not believe them. And they're deciding to do the latter strategy, which means that there's really not, any signs that anything's going to change. They think that they can keep on doing what they've been doing and surprisingly have a miraculous recovery of support. It's not happening so far. People don't like the guy. They see his weak leadership, and everything that Donald Trump said and everything we said before the 2020 election's been proven correctly. So what exactly does he have to run on at this point? Nothing. But he thinks that his strategy that's not working is going to save him. Okay, let's continue. They say why it matters. The dismissiveness of the poor polling is sincere, not public spin, according to Democrats who have spoken privately with the president and his team. So what exactly is their rationale? That's the real question. So apparently the belief has informed Biden's largely steady as she goes campaign, even as many Democrats outside the White House are agitating for a campaign to change direction. And by the way, when campaigns have their backs against the wall and they're forced to change direction, does it usually even work out well for them? I mean, maybe you might see a little bit of a recovery depending on if the changes made are positive. I mean, there's still time. It's true. But again, there's no guarantee. And time, Biden having time is not really a good thing. That's time to deteriorate even further. That's time to, see the economy. Most people think it's getting worse. There's no signs of it really getting better. They don't buy the gaslighting. They don't buy the metrics. And they say the public polling doesn't reflect the president's support. I mean, if anything, you could say the public polling is inflating the president's support because it's pitting Biden against Trump. And, some of the never Trump NPCs are going to be forced to side with Biden, but it's not going to be enough at this point, according to what we see. And that's something they don't understand. And apparently Biden's been telling anyone that he's gaining ground and is probably up on Trump from their rematch. So you think that Biden's going to go out there and win North Carolina at this point, despite his approval ratings nosediving from +4 to -17. That's over a 20-point negative split. And more people have a net favorable view of Donald Trump than Biden. That was never the case, even through a lot of Biden's presidency. But right now, when the campaign season is ramping up and they said, oh, Biden's going to, he's going to rise, he's going to hit Trump where it hurts. And still, we have time to go. But it seems like the shift has been in the direction not friendly to Biden. It really hasn't been. You look at the general election polls, they don't even put Rasmussen in the aggregate anymore, but Trump is still up by 1.2%. And that is with Quinnipiac, that's with a lot of these other polls in the mix. And he leads. He leads the popular vote, and Biden's an incumbent president sitting at 44.9%. That's a pretty clear warning sign for Joe Biden, because this is the popular vote. This is not the Electoral College. Biden probably needs to win the popular vote by 3 points to win the Electoral College, and that would be a 4.2% differential or so. Probably needs a little bit more than that. And then you go in the swing states, Biden's going to have to sweep the board in the Rust Belt because it's looking like the Sun Belt's getting a little bit too far away from him to be able to go out there and win. So it's going to come down to Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. But even so, Virginia's opening up. I mean, this is not a joke. I mean, this is not even a pollster that's right-wing internal solely. There was a McLaughlin poll that came out. That's one of Trump's internals. They had Virginia a dead heat within 1 point. This is a poll that was done with a right-wing group and a left-wing group together, and they show that Biden leads by 1 in Virginia. So you have to defend Virginia. But then North Carolina and Florida and Texas, Biden thinks he can go out there and win these states? I mean, I don't know. If you're only up by 1 in Virginia, that is bad. And yeah, I think Biden wins Virginia. I mean, there's a lot of undecideds that probably did back Biden. You think they're more likely to go home to Biden. But still, I think Trump is going to see a sizable rebound in the state of Virginia. I think you will see that. I think he'll go out there and probably, get the state. It could be within 5. And if it's within 5, it means that you're not going to see Trump go out there and lose a state like Georgia or a state like North Carolina or even a state like Pennsylvania. You would think if you're seeing a 5-point shift in Virginia, you would think you're going to see some sort of rebound in, all these swing states, at least to some degree, even if it's not 5 points, but it doesn't need to be 5 points. So when you look at this, it's like, yeah, Biden's in a lot of trouble, and they're saying the data's all wrong. They can't say how the data's wrong. They can't. That's the thing, because the differences between them and us in 2016 and 2020, we said why the data was wrong. We said the pollsters are underestimating Trump's support among white working class voters because those voters are harder to reach. And that was the rationale. It was never all the polls are fake. No, I mean, some polls probably are, and they could be now even. I mean, like the Quinnipiac poll in Wisconsin, that's a flawed poll because it's out of line with the rest of the polls. And even if Trump loses, he's not losing Wisconsin by 6. But still, it's like the data is not entirely wrong. It's not. When you have to be coping like this, you're down. Usually. Now, you could say 2022, but the polls didn't start to overestimate Republicans until early voting started, and you possibly had a response bias. And then even then, you look at some swing races. You still had polls in Arizona that had the Democrats winning all those races. You still had polls in Pennsylvania that had John Fetterman winning by several points. You don't really have any polls in a lot of swing states that have Biden up. He hasn't led a poll in a state like Nevada going all the way back to October. He hasn't led a poll in the state of Georgia going all the way back to November. He's just starting to see maybe 1 or 2 polls here and there giving him a lead in a state like Michigan. But even in Pennsylvania, he hasn't led a poll since March, and it was a very flawed poll. And before that, he hasn't led a poll for a couple months before that, and that was flawed. So regardless of however you want to look at it, the only polls he manages to have a lead in are these left-leaning polls in places like Pennsylvania, like Franklin and Marshall, Quinnipiac, etc. It's not looking good, especially because polls usually underestimate Donald Trump, especially in a place like Wisconsin, which is hard to poll, and Trump has a unique base that's very hard to reach. And the fact that he's up in the polls at all is a good sign. No, he's not guaranteed Wisconsin. I mean, you're still going to have to fight for this election, but the fact that he's up now and he was never up before, that's a very, very good sign for him. And you look at that. So there's really no way that you can go about this and say Biden's ahead. It's just delusion. Biden apparently has been citing this PBS Marist poll that shows him ahead. Okay, he's citing a poll that has him ahead. Here's the problem. That poll has him up by 2 in the popular vote. That's likely not enough to give him a victory. And Trump's at 48, Biden's at 50. They're pushing undecideds kind of, and still there's 2% undecided that don't really approve of Biden. That's just not a good sign. It's not a good sign. If that's the poll you have to cling to, that's usually not really something that's all that, because I believe that, was it Marist or NPR, they were the poll that had Democrats winning the national generic ballot in 2022, and we know they didn't do that, even if they, overperformed expectations in some districts or some states and Senate races, you name it. 2022 still, the national polling was relatively accurate. On top of that, they are saying, well, Trump's legal battles are adding mystery to the election projections, which is true, and that is something that concerned a lot of people, even on the right initially, but I said it could backfire, and it did backfire, so we'll see. And they are saying that they run strongest among likely voters in the polling data, which is true, but still they're down in a lot of likely voter samples. The one in Nevada has Biden down by double digits. I don't think he loses Nevada by double digits, but still, it's hard to really gauge a likely voter screen in May. If the problem is persisting in October, maybe it would give them some hopium, but still doesn't exactly seem to fully gauge it this far out. And even then, the polls for likely voters in some places are showing that there's not that much of a gap. And if there is, it's usually not enough for Biden to close the gap. And we saw that in a lot of these states in the New York Times poll. But still, now they're saying, well, he came from behind in the 2020 primary. Yeah, but did they really? I mean, South Carolina was an early state. Biden didn't do so well among white voters in the Democrat electorate, but among black voters is where he started to do well, and you could see that with South Carolina, and then everybody just dropped out and got behind him at the orders of the National Party, and that's kind of what gave Biden the edge. If everybody stayed in to Super Tuesday, who knows if Biden would have even been the nominee? Who really knows what would have happened? But I don't think you can use that to say it should comfort you at all. It really shouldn't. It's a primary, and there were a lot of different factors at play there. So then they are going out and saying that the election will be close, and that is true. I really think that the election should be treated like it's close, even if Trump has a sizable lead, even if he does come close in Virginia or wins Minnesota. We have to treat this thing like we're down a little bit so we have the energy. But at the end of the day, it's true we can't get caught off guard, but this is still delusion. And the problem is that they're just in denial. People don't like Biden. Whether you think that he still has a shot, I think he has a shot. Obviously, it's not as big of a shot as he had even a couple of months ago, but you can't sit back here and say, we're doing everything perfectly, the polling is wrong, and then go out there and win. This is not 2022. You're going to have higher turnout than 2022, but possibly and probably lower turnout than 2020. But that combination probably helps Trump because the people who are dropping off from 2020 probably were more likely to support Biden, but then have found themselves in a state of disillusionment with Biden. So we'll see. They can be convinced, but we have almost 6 months to go, and this reads like delusion, but let them be delusional, because the more complacent and delusional they are, the easier I think it's going to be to defeat them. And we can't be complacent or delusional either on the flip side. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.